Good morning, traders. It is 8:01 Chicago time on Monday, the 26th of June, 2023, the last Monday of this month. Thanks for joining me for episode number 2490. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Quick audio check, please. Let me know how we're coming through. Just jumping into the convergent trading pre-market summary sheet this morning. We have a mixed start. Very, very little change against Friday's settlement. The market's really has not gone anywhere substantial overnight. It has wiggled around a little bit, but you could see that the Nasdaq of all products is unchanged essentially. Same with the Dow, same with the S&P and the Russell. A little bit of movement in the Euro Stoxx 50. We did get the German IFO business climate, a major number out of Germany, came in at 88.5 versus the expected 90.7, so came in kind of soft. But the overall risk posture is, oh, these guys are loud. But overall, we don't have very much to go on this morning in terms of dislocation of price. Earnings, we have Carnival. That's it. Nothing major after the close. The weekend was full of geopolitical news. I'm sure you heard about the sort of coup. It's an insurrection. A little bit of what goes around comes around, I guess. I don't know. It's an insurrection by the Wagner Group, which is a private army or military unit in Russia that's been doing a lot of fighting in Ukraine and has been kind of supported and monetized by the Russian government. It's private in that it's not part of the Russian military, and that keeps it away from the usual restrictions that you have on a normal sovereign military force. So it's been useful for Putin, but there have been conflict between the Minister of Defense of Russia, the generals of the army, the highest brass in the army, and Wagner. And so the head of the Wagner Group turned against the Minister of Defense and the top military brass. And in a video, a half-hour video that was put out, basically complaining about how the war is going, how many lives are being lost, and the public does not know. Supposedly in retaliation, that military brass started attacking Wagner Group bases and encampments, and in return, Wagner Group decided to turn away from Ukraine, take over the southern city from which it's launching its offensive against Ukraine, took over the southern Russian military command, and then started going towards Moscow. It actually was within 100 miles of Moscow, reportedly. So this is all geopolitical. What does it mean for us? The market didn't really care. This was happening on Friday in Russia while the markets were open in the U.S., and it didn't really figure in. But these are things we should know about, because what it shows is a destabilization of the Russian government. It also shows some really important cracks in the institution or in the systems within Russia. So the long and the short of it is, there was Putin came out and said that this is an act of treason, and basically ordered the military to put this down. The military did not make a move, and then by what is it, Saturday night, um, they had struck a deal with the intervention of the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, and for that, the Wagner head gets to move to Russia, get amnesty, and get no prosecution against on those charges of treason. So this is kind of an interesting thing because it might be a power grab or whatever, but it's quite destabilizing in a nuclear power, and that really affects all of us, right? Again, the German IFO came out 88.5 versus 90.7. It's pretty soft. IFO economists said likelihood that German economy will shrink again in Q2 has increased. ECB's annual Sintra Forum kicks off, and I'll go over what's important this weekend. Kicks off today. IBM to acquire a PTO for 4.6 billion. Not sure what that is. I actually didn't see that. But what's important this week in terms of key news? Again, Lagarde is ECB's president. Lagarde is expected to speak at 1:30. So if you're trading euro-based pairs, might want to pay attention to that. There's likely to be news flow from the Sintra Forum. This is ECB's Jackson Hole, pretty important for European economists. And then tomorrow, so what's top tier news? Tomorrow we do have ECB's Lagarde again at 4 a.m. Eastern. We have the inflation rate out of Canada at 8:30 Eastern. We have durable goods at that same time from the U.S. And then Wednesday, we get the GfK consumer confidence out of Germany. We get Fed's Powell speech at 9:30, right at the market cash open on Wednesday. Thursday, we get consumer confidence out of Japan. Fed's Powell again at 2:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. And then we get the inflation rate out of Germany, which is important, at 8 a.m. Eastern. And then we get the MBS manufacturing PMI out of China. And then Friday we get the inflation rate out of France, unemployment and inflation out of the Eurozone, and then this really important number for the Fed on Friday. We don't have anything important for the Fed really until Friday. Remember, the Fed is now very economic release focused. So this is really important in that we do get the PCE number on Friday. This is an indication of prices. This is a price index. So Friday is a big one, 8:30 in the morning Eastern, and then at the same time, personal income, personal spending. I want to bring your attention to the rotations and the ranges on the most popular products: ESNQ, RTY, the Dow, and crude oil. There are many popular futures products, gold. There's the Eurex products and so on, but these are the ones that are really traded the most. You can see the rotations in the ES have dropped slightly. The NQ has increased its rotations. So did the Russell. The Dow has fallen 35, I think, from 36, and crude has remained the same at 23 cents per 1 minute rotation, swing high to swing low on the RTH session over the last 20 sessions. Other than that, looking at the S&P has a multi-distribution profile in the overnight session, has two distributions actually. It's a double distribution profile with the line in the sand right at Friday's close of 43.90. There's a clear line right there. 196 contracts, 196,000 contracts have traded. 32% of those were more on the sell side than the buy side, so there's more volume below the close than above. And then the point of control has shifted yet again down to 43.83. So we've had a pretty methodical shift in value in the ES, stair step down, very clear structures in the auction. I'll show you that here in a second. Go over that. So here's the ES. So you could see an excess right there. This was an excess right here. Then we have an open gap still, pretty weak structure. But from there, we have a double distribution, balance, 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 price action down, points of control shifting down. You can see where it's going down, down, down. If you recall, maybe not last week, but the Friday before, I talked about how the point of control is shifting on the ES, and it seemed to be stalling a little bit. But overall, we've left behind this really important 44.16 balance area and traded below it on Friday. On Friday, we opened in the gap, and I talked about how I'm going to be watching for the 44.05, 44.05, 4400 to 44.05 for a turn. And that took just forever. Really frustrating morning in that it was just like, okay, are we really going to keep pushing? But what it did is it went into the prior day's range at 43.93, and then it went to, a little bit higher, then it just stalled, then it went to 4400 and stalled, then it pushed to 44.05. This is where I was stalking a short, looking for it to rotate back over and start moving towards 43.70. So Friday's plan, and I'm not going to bring it up here, Friday's plan is an open auction that's squeezed to 44.05. Then we're looking for an impulse down, and when that happens, we're looking for a continuation to 43.70. There was very little interest in trading on Friday. In fact, Friday, if I recall correctly, the volume was off by like 42 or 46%. I don't know. I posted on Conversion Trading's Maven's channel. At some point, I looked at the volume and it was very, very, very off. Yes, there was a holiday on Monday last week, but coming into the weekend, and this is a full week, and then we have a holiday next week here in the U.S. I expected us to get to the 42.70, 43.70 much more methodically than we have. Not that the market gives two hoots about what I think or what I expect, but there's a healthy auction, there's good rotations, and then there's this grind. So if we look at Friday's action, you had a complete open auction right here, just an open auction back and forth, and then it starts to hold VWAP, starts to squeeze. We have a break of the IB high, and then we have what is our first impulse. So this impulse here is the first time for the day where I can start now to apply scenario one, which was, again, looking for a push to 400 or 44.05. Anyway, you can look up Friday's video and look at the plan there, 44.05. So my job now is to stalk the pullback, look for a short, get short, and look for it to break the IB low and then to start moving towards the 70. And it did take out the last low, which is a high probability scale for me. This is where risk comes off, and then it gets down into the open right here, and then just walks itself right back up. So it's just like, there's just no real price discovery going on, and that creates conditions that can be frustrating, especially at the end of the week. Then it finally tests the 44.05 and it squeezes through by a little bit to 44.08. So it went to '08. Our next area to check was '05. And then we get this impulse that breaks through. Okay, so we have an initial impulse here that triggers, and then so now we're looking for it to break through into the IB, break through the day generated levels, which are the VWAP and mid for full session and RTH. And then now it's time to stock a trade. And what does it do? It just runs right through. The pullbacks are so small, there wasn't much for me to play with there. So it's overall just kind of a day of nothingness. We ended up with a B-shaped profile that's really balanced. So this is kind of balanced with the long tail on one end. It's not really B shape because a B shape starts up here, moves down, and then finds balance, and therefore forms the stick at the top and then forms balance at the bottom to give us our B shape. So this was classified more as a balanced profile than a B shape because we started at the bottom here and then we created the vertical, and we ended up rejecting these higher prices and moving right back. So another neutral normal day in the ES. And then once we closed, so we settled here at 43.89, right on top of the old 43.90 basically. We open up, we test down, and then it looks like we're holding the day generated levels. Finally, we break through. Here's Europe. Europe comes in, and boom, they sell them off. And what we end up with is two distributions here. So this morning, going to be watching this 43.90 area pretty closely. And we were pulling back to it, but I'm going to be watching it pretty closely. We do have a weak low. You can see the double bottom here. I know other people consider that a strength. I consider it weakness. Strength is when the market moves away, just like it did here with a good taper. Strength is not when the market is able to retest the price again. That is not a strong low. That's a weak low. So I expect this to consolidate, retest, and then push down. But lately, the opens have been kind of opposite what is expected. It tends to try to really fully test in both directions. Looking at the delta here to try to figure out what we have in terms of order flow, you could see the delta overall once it sold off on the European Open, that it's pretty strongly negative throughout the session. Large lots, small lots on the same side. I expect us to retest that low is how I see it. I expect us to come back down and recheck the 43.75, and then again it brings us to that all important 43.70 below, and then I'm going to be monitoring very, very carefully for how it reacts at 43.70. Again, where does 43.70 come from? It is the bottom of the singles on June 12th. It's the high of the other day. So on June 12th, we came in and it was an incredibly choppy, quiet day that ran away at the end of the session. And then we ended up gapping up the next day for balance. And then we ended up continuing and retesting the gap, closing the gap, very orderly in that sense. But we left beneath us some pretty weak structures, some of which were tested in the overnight session. Those tests don't mean anything. It's got to be done in RTH. And then that leaves us with an open kind of weak area all the way through to 43.70. Beyond 43.70, we're back right into this 43.50 area right here. The point of control of this day, the low of this day at 51, that becomes the next test area. So we have 70, excuse me, We have 70 and 50 below us. If it cannot hold the 50, we're looking for 43.26, 43.26, and that brings us right down into balance here. So we move, if it doesn't hold 43.70, we move from the upper distribution balance, clear the low volume node right here, and now we're aiming for this 43, whatever, 30, 43.26. That becomes the next key area to test to the downside, and that's what we're looking for. Overall, again, the path of least resistance is downwards, and we are challenging the prior settlement. So I'm expecting a choppy open this morning on the ES, expecting a choppy open. We're right against the prior settlement. We have the overnight point of control beneath us. We are sandwiched between the settlement is right on top of, or the full session mid is right on top of Friday's settlement. We have VWAP in the area, so it's just a kind of a crap sandwich right there. And then the question, I got to sit on my hands until it pushes 43.90. And then once it pushes 43.90, the next question becomes, is it going to hold 43.90? So if we push 43.90, why am I drawing in the air when I have this whiteboard? If it squeezes 43.90 and then comes back to retest and that holds, now you're looking at squeezing to the high of the overnight session, and that's the 4400, 4405 come back into play once again, and we are back to Friday's scenario again, but having done some work to the downside, and it's just 43.70 is not in the cards yet. So as long as it holds Friday's high, which is 08, if it pushes to the upside, as long as it holds 08, the one-time framing continues to be intact, and the 43.70 is still in the cards. It's still something that can play. Even though it might have taken 43.90, it has pushed to 4400, 4405, might stall there, don't know. But as long as it holds 44.08, the one-time framing down continues, and the expectation is it's likely to rotate down. And if it gets all the way up there, makes all that effort, it's not able to take out Friday's high, this is a strong indication that we have short time frame traders in control and a lack of conviction to the trend. And so that keeps the door for 43.70 open. Again, please don't get caught up in the minutia. Don't get caught up in your scalping order flow chart with the blinking lights. Like, just don't. It's especially over the summer, you're likely to get flipped around a lot. Focus on your bigger picture charts. For me, it is the TPO chart. It is the intraday chart right here, just to keep things in check. So you could see where that 43.70 comes from right here. Okay, it's the breakout point of the 12th, and it's the high of the 9th. And then we came back to retest and couldn't quite clear it. So it's still a very important retest area. And here we are at the lower end of Friday's range. To me, the path of least resistance is still to the downside. Okay, so that's how things look. The NQ, however, is different. So if we look at the NQ's chart, we have an excess high right up here, okay? The excess high right up here. We don't have a gap between these 2 days. You could, right there, you're detecting a little bit more orderliness or strength to the structure as it comes down. And then we have kind of a double distribution, a low belly, a high belly, and an inside day on Friday. So what it did is it actually held lower high, lower high, lower high by only a handful of ticks, lower high because it was an inside day. And now the NASDAQ sitting right on top of, it's settled right on top of balance right there. It's trading currently right on top of balance. It put in a higher low, and it still has this 14, this 14,870-ish area to clean up right down here. So 14,870 is a huge test target for the NQ, and it just seems to be a lot stronger. So the overall plan for the ES on Friday was sound, but I told you the caveat with the plan for the ES is that the NQ is a lot stronger. While the ES was trying for lows, the NQ was actually pushing the session highs, and that creates a very divergent and very difficult environment. Remember, the biggest issues in the NQ exist in the ES, and they're likely to drag each other around. So they're not flowing with each other very well, and so that creates a very kind of push-pull type of trade, and this is why we're seeing a push-pull kind of trade. Okay, so remember, the NQ is still in balance here, still holding balance. By contrast, the ES has gotten below that balance. Remember, 44.16 is a lot higher than where we are now, 43.85, whereas the Nasdaq is right on top of that equivalent 44.16, so it's holding some strength. So the Nasdaq, as an indication to the ES, is not a very good one right now. The spread between those is actually diverging, is out of whack. Okay, so I'm going to let you go here. That's about all I wanted to cover. Good luck. You know, Mondays are always a long video. Good luck. Make sure you have your head in the game. Keep the big picture in mind, and keep the big picture in mind. Don't get caught up in the minutia, in the order flow. It's really not a game that you can win long term, in my opinion. And this is coming from someone who used to scalp a lot of big size in various products, and I don't do it anymore, and there's a reason I don't. Good luck, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care.